What is the point of learning English for years if I don't understand anybody when they actually speak? That's a question I didn't really understand until I had to learn a language myself. But first, let me tell you a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in California in a Hispanic family. At home, everything was in Spanish. But then at school, with my siblings, with my friends, everything was English. So growing up bilingual, you don't really understand what it's like to learn a new language. It feels like it just happens naturally. I never really had to give it much thought on what it was actually like to learn a foreign language. I had spent a few years working at a school with bilingual students, helping them to not get held back in their studies, helping to bring them up to date with the curriculum in the school. But then in my mid-30s, my husband and I came to visit Thailand, and we met friends who had moved out here, American friends. And for us, a better quality of life could be found here. And so we made the decision to move out to Thailand. Then we were suddenly faced with a huge challenge. Now, as 35-year-olds, it was time to learn a new language and be faced with a number of challenges and questions that we had never had to encounter before in our life. For the first time in my life, I was now the student instead of the teacher. So we started learning Thai a couple months before we moved out here to Thailand. And then we made the move. And about 2 weeks in, I realized everything I had learned from textbooks now had to be bundled up, thrown out the window, and we had to start from zero. Why is that? Because the reality is that in just about every language you learn from a textbook speaking is not the same as day-to-day speaking. There are a lot of nuances, and it's based on the region that you move to, the setting that you're in. I realized that these textbooks that I had been using to learn Thai were good if I was a businesswoman or if I'm on vacation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But I was not interested in only knowing how to order a beer or what to say during a massage or how to greet people in very, very formal ways that my neighbors and the people that I was meeting in markets, or they don't speak that way. And what was actually happening is when I was speaking in the formal way that I learned, I would get these looks like, what are you saying? Even simple things such as hello, goodbye, thank you, please. The words that I learned that I had in my word bank had no value. They had no value. Nobody spoke the way that I thought they did because these textbooks are very, very rigid to specific patterns. Now, don't get me wrong. These sentence structures in these textbooks can be useful to getting a solid foundation, but there always comes a point where you step out of that very sheltered environment of textbook land, and now you have to put all that theory into practice, and all the rules change once you start interacting with people from different regions, different ages. Those rules don't apply in real life. And I believe that no matter what language it is, whether it's English, Thai, Spanish, Japanese, whatever language you're learning, they rarely follow the rules that you're learning through a textbook. So now, my husband and I have been living in the south of Thailand for 9 years. And we've been exposed to listening to Thai from the South, people we meet down here from the North, people we meet from Bangkok, which would be Central Thai. There are so many multiple ways of saying one thing. And so you have to learn to be adaptable, but you also need exposure. So now, after living here in Thailand for 9 years, I can confidently say that learning a new language has more so to do with learning language and expression patterns than grammar rules. So somewhere along the time when we were early on in living in Thailand, I started teaching English through some online platforms, and it was okay, but there was a lot of I was required to stick very close to the curriculum, where you teach grammar, you repeat. That's how I was trained to teach these students who some were learning English starting from zero. Some students are able to progress by strictly adhering or keeping to these textbook rules. Some are very gifted and are able to succeed learning English in this way. But the majority, I noticed that this was not the best way to learn. The reality is that we're all different and we all learn in different ways. So I decided to take more freedom with some of my students. I started teaching in bundles of phrases, chunking, changing the rhythm of whatever it is I was, saying to them. They would, mimic, parrot back, follow and say what I would say. And so basically what I did is I started teaching in the way that I enjoyed learning Thai and how I wish someone had taught me. By the time I became a medium level Thai speaker, I knew there was a lot missing in my speaking skills. And what I really craved the most was the naturalness, the ability to speak, converse, and communicate in a natural way, not like a textbook robot. And the result, what I realized, what I confirmed my suspicions, was that those students who came out of the box and had the ability to converse and chit chat and listen to my changes in rhythm and phrasing and chunking, all of those little things that I felt were helping me, they started to progress and even leave behind the students who were strictly adhering to their textbooks. They were having more conversations with much more confidence, expanding out into different subjects. So the students who focused on phrasing instead of word per word, they were the ones who started communicating faster. The frustration. So for me, it's very frustrating to get caught up and tangled in grammar, because how are you going to remember all these set of rules along with vocabulary and proper sentence structure? Again, it's important, but it's not. But eventually you have to forget it and just dive in and start speaking. And we have to remember, as a foreign language learner, grammar has value, but it's not the destination. Grammar was like learning the rules of basketball. Eventually you have to stop reading the rule book and you have to just play. And you have to learn from instinct what the next move might be, how someone, their body language, where you should go, where you should be prepared. A lot of it is based on real life experience, and the instinct will kick in to help you understand what people are telling you, but also to mimic that and speak with them in the same way. And also, this brings me back to the question at the beginning of our video. What's the point of learning English if you still can't enjoy conversing, having conversations with English speaking people. For me, there isn't. There is no point if you still cannot converse with people. It could feel like a lot of wasted energy and a lot of frustration. So my passion now, these last 9 years of experience learning Thai and working as an English teacher, the advice that I would tell every single one of my students, or every single person learning a foreign language, not just English, any language, learn phrases, learn patterns, learn real conversation, and listen to authentic English. Don't just study English, experience English. So why PhraseNest? I want to give to people what I wish I had when I barely started learning English. I feel like if I had received that in my first 6 months of learning English while I was still living in, my first 6 months of learning Thai while still living in America, that would have made a big difference. I wanted, at that time, exposure. I wanted real conversations. I wanted someone to speak to me in Thai in a natural way, but in a good pace, to where I could still mimic them, and then later worry about speed. So for me, PhraseNest is the resource that I wish I had when I was learning Thai. So who is PhraseNest for? Let me drink some water first. Well, maybe you've been studying English for years. Maybe you know the grammar. Maybe you know exactly what you want to say and even how to say it. But when Americans start talking and it's your turn to listen, everything suddenly sounds different. So this is why I'm here. I'm not here to teach you perfect English. I actually think it's really boring to study grammar. I'm here to help you understand English. What you're gonna hear when you go order a coffee in a coffee shop in New York, in California. What you're gonna hear when you meet new friends speaking English. When you visit the Grand Canyon or the Statue of Liberty while you're traveling or watching a movie from home. This channel is about understanding people, real people. Along the way, maybe even being understood. So, if that's the kind of English that you want to learn, then welcome to PhraseNest. I look forward to hearing from you and answering any questions that you might have. Please feel free to ask anything. All right, I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening and watching.